Greetings, loyal subjects of the Imperium of Man. I am Librarian Elias of the Adeptus Astartes. I am creating a series of recordings with the intent of educating the general populace of the dangers of the galaxy. All of this information comes from the Lexicanum provided to me by the Adeptus Mechanicus. I will be reading verbatim from their archives. This recording will cover one of the many foes the Imperium has. A Zargarad, otherwise known as the Nightbringer. A Zargarad, otherwise known as the Nightbringer, is a Catan, a living god of the Necrons that survives as fragmented shards. The Nightbringer's earliest history is that of a pioneer and deathbringer. Its love of pain and death is monumental, a living god of suffering and despair. When the Necrontyr first encouraged the Catan to cross the incorporeal Starlight Bridge into the material realm, the Nightbringer was the first to come, and the first to enter a living metal body, with the living metal soon to become the necrodermis that the Necrons find themselves entombed in. It was found feeding on the very star that blasted the Necrontyr with countless amounts of radiation. Once it had become manifest, it soon learned that the life force of mortal lives tasted far superior to its previous diet of star energy, and with this revelation, it consumed those who had brought it into the material universe. Only through pledges of loyalty could the Necrontyr convince the Nightbringer to stop destroying their race and concentrate on the vast expanses of the galaxy. This initial episode of mortal consumption led to more destruction on behalf of the Nightbringer. At this time, the Necrontyr had been waging battle against the race known as the Old Ones. The Necrontyr had brought the Star Gods into the mortal plane to help them in their war, known as the War in Heaven. The Nightbringer reveled in the war with the Old Ones, as nothing but mortal souls could satisfy its hunger. In its desire to consume more souls, the Nightbringer would lay waste to entire regions of space just to feed. It is said that gradually, the Nightbringer fell further and further from the original design the Necrontyr had brought it into the material world for, namely, the destruction of the Old Ones. The Nightbringer began to destroy and feed at will, and it reached into the minds of nearly every race and planted its image into their deepest fears. It is said that it nurtured entire races to fear it, and it fed on that fear. Eventually, the Nightbringer began to feed on the other Catan. One source states that it was the Deceiver that convinced it to consume the other Catan, but another document says that it was the Laughing God of the Harlequins that caused it to eat its brethren. The Laughing God version is explained by the Eldar in The Death of Light, a Harlequin dance routine that describes what happened. It was then, though, that the Catan began to consume one another, finding that the souls of their own kind were even sweeter than the lesser races. However, no other Catan can match the slaughter of the Nightbringer. It was then that the Enslaver Plague, which consisted of the Xenos race known as Enslavers, infiltrating the Old Ones' galactic civilization and feeding on their essence. This Enslaver Plague is what put an end to the War in Heaven between the Old Ones, the Catan, and the Necrontyr, though at this point they are now the Necrons that we know of today. Eventually, the Nightbringer would suffer the same downfall as the rest of its remaining Catan brethren in a revolt led by the Necron Silent King, Zarek. By this point, the Nightbringer had been gutted to the point of human hubris by feeding on its fellow gods, and it was brought low by the god-killing hypercannons devised by the finest cryptex in the galaxy. The reason it worked so well was the Nightbringer was convinced that these weapons were being built out of tribute. The Nightbringer's shards were then bound within an array of necrodermis and enslaved. A shard of Azar-Garad was eventually discovered in the Gulga system by the Ordo Xenos, one of the three major ordos of the Inquisition, a Death Watch team consisting of unique, specially trained space marines that are dedicated to Xenos hunting, was sent to recover the artifact, only to find the system rife with both biological and mechanical undead. After many months of warfare, the Death Watch was able to recover and destroy the shard of the Nightbringer. As the Nightbringer existed before the age of humanity, it was known and reviled by the other living species at the time. The Nightbringer had planted its name as death into the minds of many races, and is known to the Eldar as Kalis Ra, the Destroyer of Light. While humanity, millions of years later, simply call it the Reaper. Only the Krork, the ancient variant of orcs that we know of today, escaped the fear of death, for they do not fear it, but revel in it. An artifact was recovered detailing a prophecy of the Eldar that states, "The Master of Death will drink deep from Isha's eye." It is thought that Isha's eye is referred to as the star Cyclo, but this has since become a dead star, possibly indicating that the Nightbringer has already fed on the star, ending its life. There is an event known as the Awakening of a Nightbringer Shard. The event began when the 4th Company of the Ultramarines, led by Captain Uriel Ventress, was sent to the Imperial mining world known as Pavonis. Pavonis, however, was also a Necron tomb world that had lain dormant for millions of years. Uriel Ventress was tasked as a bodyguard to Ario Barzano, an inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos, traveling in disguise as an administratum adept. Barzano's mission was to restore order on Pavonis, which had failed to pay its imperial tithes due to political unrest, mysterious terrorist activities, and frequent raids by Dark Eldar pirates. In truth, he was investigating clues that a shard of the Nightbringer was hidden somewhere on Pavonis. Eventually, a civil war broke out between the various industrial cartels that controlled the planet. One of the ringleaders of the rebel faction, Casimir de Valtos, had incited the war to hide the fact he was digging up the tomb of the Nightbringer with the help of the Dark Eldar. However, this was reluctant, as he had been tortured by Dark Eldar pirates in the past. When the Ultramarines and the Inquisitor heard of the Civil War, they made for Pavonis as quickly as they could, and they rescued the governor and investigated the cause, discovering the cartel's real plan. Barzano was going to initiate an exterminatus, but Uriel convinced him to let the Ultramarines launch an attack on the mine, where the cartel leader's men were digging. Unfortunately, the shard of the Nightbringer was awoken as the Ultramarines entered the tomb, and before they could destroy the Nightbringer, it escaped. During the battle, Uriel's trusted friend and confidant, Sergeant Pausanias the Sane, had his right arm severed by the Nightbringer. However, this imbued Pausanias with a small measure of the regenerative powers of the necrodermis of which Necron bodies are composed of. However, during the Indomitus Crusade, a separate shard of the Nightbringer appeared on the death world of Sycorax. This time, Ventress, Pausanias, and other forces came into battle to face the shard again. This time, they defeated it with the aid of the Mechanicum, Imperial Guard, and the Legio Astorum, a Titan Legion, based on the Forge world Lucius. This concludes the information regarding the Nightbringer. more in-depth information regarding it will be recorded at a later date. This is Librarian Elias, signing off.